PT, an initialism for Playable Teaser, is a first-person psychological horror playable demo video game developed by Kojima Productions under the pseudonym 7780 Studio and published by Konami. The game was directed by Hideo Kojima in collaboration with film director Guillermo del Toro. Released for the PlayStation on the 12th of August 2014 as a free download on the PlayStation Network, PT served primarily as an interactive teaser for the game Silent Hills, a cancelled installment in the Silent Hill series. After the cancellation, Konami removed PT from the PlayStation Store and eliminated the opportunity to reinstall the game, a decision that later spawned criticism, fan efforts to allow PT to be re-downloaded, and fan remakes of the game. PT received critical acclaim for its direction, visuals, story complexity, and its supernatural horror tension build, while its puzzles drew mixed responses. The game it presented, Silent Hills, was a survival horror video game developed by Kojima Productions for the PlayStation 4 from 2012 until its cancellation in 2015. It was to be the 9th main installment of the Silent Hill series and was to be directed by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro. Series publisher Konami brought Kojima onto the project in September 2012. The game was announced via PT, short for Playable Teaser, a critically acclaimed demo released as a free download from the PlayStation Store in August of 2014. PT revealed the involvement of Del Toro along with Norman Reedus as the voice and appearance of its protagonist. The game's development was questioned due to rumors surrounding Kojima's work with the completion of Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, and his eventual exit from Konami. In April of 2015, Konami announced that the game had been cancelled, a move that was criticized by journalists and fans of the franchise. Kojima, Del Toro, and Reedus later reunited for the game Death Stranding. The game's cancellation was due to the fact that in March of 2015, sources reported that due to conflicts with Konami, Kojima and his senior staff planned to leave Konami following the completion of Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Concurrently, Konami announced a resurrecting of its video game business and removed references to Kojima and Kojima Productions from the promotional materials for its games. A Konami spokesperson initially denied that Kojima was leaving the company and stated that he would still be involved with Konami and the Metal Gear franchise. At a San Francisco Film Society event on April 26, 2015, Assistant Director Guillermo del Toro reportedly told attendees that Silent Hills had been cancelled. The next day, Norman Reedus also made statements on Twitter stating that the game had been cancelled. The same day, Konami announced that PT would be pulled from the PlayStation Store on April 29, 2015, and Polygon reported that an anonymous tip by a person familiar with the game's development had also confirmed the game's cancellation. On April 27th of 2015, Konami issued a statement to Kotaku confirming that Silent Hills would, quote, would not be continued, but that they planned to continue the Silent Hill franchise. Fans upset by the cancellation later started a petition on Change.org asking for Konami to continue the project. As of March 4th, 2016, the petition has received 100,279 signatures. In a tweet from Guillermo del Toro, he revealed that horror manga artist Junji Ito would also have been involved with the project. Cliff Bleszinski was also asked to work on the project but declined, later explaining on Twitter, "I don't like LA. I love new IP, and I would've fucked up SH." End quote. During Sony Interactive Entertainment's E3 2016 press conference, the reformed Kojima Productions unveiled a new game, Death Stranding, which also features Reedus and Del Toro. On the 4th of July, 2018, Simon Wimsar-Cromwell, a 17-year-old developer and fan of PT, remade the playable trailer for the PC using Unreal Engine 4 and released it for free. On July 13, 2018, Konami called Kimzar asking him to take down the project due to legal issues, a request he complied with. The Konami representative admitted the remake was very popular within the company, and offered Kimzar an internship. The game itself centers on an unnamed protagonist who awakens in a concrete-lined room and opens a door to a haunted corridor, in which he can only walk through a hallway which continuously loops and redecorates itself. The first time he passes, a radio reports on a familicide, which was committed by the father and later mentions 2 other cases exactly like it.
Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car, listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell. There was another family shot to death in the same state last month, and in December last year, a man used a rifle and meat cleaver to murder his entire family. In each case, the perpetrators were fathers. State police say this string of domestic homicides appears unrelated, though it could be part of a larger trend such as employment, child care, and other social issues facing the average family.
Later on, the protagonist encounters a hostile and unstable entity, presumably named Lisa. Upon entering the bathroom and being locked inside, he obtains a flashlight and finds a creature resembling an underdeveloped fetus crying in the sink. He soon gets out, but finds out that the apparition is watching him. While it is possible to avoid the ghost completely, if the protagonist is attacked by the ghost, he reawakens in the first room of the game, beginning the loop again. In this room, there is a bloody moving paper bag that speaks to him, telling him of a disturbing experience and stating, quote, seen at the start of the game. Quote, "Watch out! The gap in the door, it's a separate reality. The only me is me. Are you sure the only you is you?" End quote. The next few loops feature a refrigerator hanging from the ceiling, leaking blood. The muffled sound of a hysterically crying baby can be heard from the refrigerator, which shakes violently. After the player completes a puzzle and enters the next loop, the refrigerator is absent, and the radio issues a Swedish message referencing the 1938 radio drama War of the Worlds.
Radiodramat från 75 år sedan var
In the next loop, the lamps turn completely red, the player's vision blurs, the protagonist moves abnormally quickly, and the door leading to the staircase at the other end of the corridor is replaced by infinite repetitions of the same loop. Eventually, the protagonist discovers a hole in the wall, and looks through it to hear a woman being stabbed to death in the bathroom, while a voice on the radio rants about societal instability.
I'm talking while the fine, upstanding folks got their welfare cut, got their jobs pulled out from under us. You know what to do. Now's the time. Do it.
After the sounds of the radio and the killing stop, the bathroom door opens by itself, and the player enters upon the fetus-like creature, telling the protagonist that 10 months earlier, an unspecified person lost his job and turned to alcoholism. His wife then worked as a part-time cashier to financially support the family, but the manager was sexually attracted to her.
Booze. She had to get a part-time job working a grocery store cash register. Only reason she could earn a wage at all is the manager liked how she looked in a skirt. You remember, right? Exactly 10 months back.
The corridor corrects itself, then the protagonist eventually hears a voice uttering 204863 repeatedly. Yeah, this game is a real doozy, even for the most hardened of horror fans. The player's perspective distorts, and the game displays a false crash message. When the game is restarted, the protagonist awakens in the concrete-lined room, and he continues the next and final loop, with only the flashlight as a light source. He discovers the torn pieces of a photograph scattered throughout the hall and resembles it in its frame. After the picture is completed and a set of tasks is done, a telephone rings. The protagonist answers the phone to hear the words, quote, "You've been chosen," end quote. The protagonist hears a door unlock and leaves the building. In the subsequent cutscene, a voice remarks about having lived a life of regularity until his father killed him and his family without any creativity. He then states his intention to return with his, quote, "new toys," end quote. The protagonist steps out onto the streets of a deserted city and is revealed to be portrayed by Norman Reedus. The credits then reveal the nature of the playable teaser. I was thoroughly disappointed when I found out this promising, albeit ambitious project got cancelled. I think that just knowing the people that were behind its direction and development indicates that it would have been a quality experience unparalleled and unseen by any video game or game-making talent so far. It would have been a more than worthy addition and enhancement of the Silent Hill series and a fresh new take on the storyline that's much needed to prevent a franchise that's been going on for so long from getting so repetitive. But don't just take my word for it. Some faceless online Neanderthal who probably lives rent-free since the likely candidate for the place he lives is his parents' basement. PT received praise from video game journalists. Games Radar's David Houghton praised it as well-executed, immersive horror and wrote, quote, "By spreading out into the real world, by forcing solutions by way of hearsay, internet whisperers, and desperate rumored logic, it has become its own urban myth," end quote. IGN's Marty Silva ranked it as an honorable mention on his list of the best video game trailers for 2014. And another reviewer for IGN, Lucy O'Brien, described the game as, quote, "the most genuinely frightening interactive experience in recent years," end quote. Giant Bomb gave the Best Horror Game award to PT in 2014. PT won Scariest Game at Bloody Disgusting Sphere Awards. At least going by PT, which would be the best insight gamers would have into the finished product, the game would have used a first-person perspective in contrast to the usual third-person perspective presented in previous Silent Hill games, and it would center on an unknown protagonist who wakes up in a supposedly haunted house and witnesses supernatural occurrences. The only actions available were zooming in, walking, and interacting with items to solve puzzles given to the player in order for them to proceed. Like in many horror games, it would have relied on puzzles and deduction for the player's challenge, and a first-person perspective may not have been what Silent Hill fans had been accustomed to, but it's immensely interesting to see what kind of horror Konami could pull off with it. This premise for a horror game might sound familiar to avid horror gamers, especially ones who delved into the indie space from earlier this past decade until now. Admittedly, I am disgruntled that major gaming magazines praised a trailer of something you could download off of itch.io for free as the best horror game and the scariest horror game, as it's what the indie space blatantly did for years and is now being swept up by a AAA studio. There are some things Konami can do that indie developers can't, and vice versa. So it is interesting to see their spin on games of this type. I'm not trying to hold this development studio to a certain standard of accountability, or to give my laundry list of complaints as to why I think everyone involved should have gone through with Silent Hills, but I'm simply trying to explain why not doing it was a mistake, and could have been an amazing opportunity for Konami, and their fans alike, to see what this new route of storyline and gameplay would do for both.